This is things I wish I could say in Sunday school. I want to share some thoughts and ideas that are different than what we usually hear. My goal is to be really honest rather than inherently faith-promoting. I hope these ideas may spark some interesting discussions with your friends, families, or classes. Please enjoy. This is the lessons for January 27th through February 2nd and February 3rd through February 9th. This covers Doctrine and Covenants, sections 3 through 9. Topics today are translation of the Book of Mormon, Martin Harris and Professor Charles Anthon, and Oliver Cowdery's translation attempt. Today I'm going to start with the translation of the Book of Mormon. The description of translating the Book of Mormon that I was told during my childhood and young adulthood was that Joseph Smith was sitting at a desk or table with the golden plates in front of him. There was a scribe on the other side of the table with a physical barrier separating them so the scribe couldn't see the gold plates. Joseph Smith used the Urim and Thummim that were buried with the gold plates. They were assembled kind of like spectacles or glasses. Joseph Smith literally looked through the Urim and Thummim at the gold plates and translated the Reformed Egyptian characters into English words spoken to the scribe who wrote them down. That's what I was taught the translation process was. While there is an element of magic to this, it's largely in keeping with other bits of magic in the Bible, healing, angels, etc. If you're looking at this from a religious and spiritual perspective, it's in the realm of believability. At least that's how I see it. But this is not actually how most of the Book of Mormon was dictated. I didn't learn this until I was 26. Maybe a small portion was done the way I was taught, but the majority was done in a way that makes much less sense. Most of the dictation was done with Joseph Smith putting a seer stone in a hat and then putting his face in the hat. This would block out light, and then he would dictate to his scribe. Joseph Smith was not looking at the plates, and it's not clear if the plates were even in the room all the time, which makes the term translation extra suspect. If he was dictating without looking at the plates, in what world is that translating? This more honest account is now acknowledged by the Church in the Gospel Topics essay on Book of Mormon translation. I also want to comment about the seer stone. Most scholars believe that the seer stone that Joseph Smith put in the hat to translate the Book of Mormon is the same one that he used to locate buried treasure, for which he charged people. He never did actually locate buried treasure. He just scammed people claiming he could. I just wanted to show the connection that the seer stone Joseph Smith used for his treasure digging was likely the same one he put in the hat to dictate the Book of Mormon. Now I want to share some of my personal feelings about this. I was in a Fifth Sunday combined meeting about 9 years ago, and a member of the bishopric was basically giving some church counterpoints to issues that members leave the church over. I got frustrated after a while and raised my hand and said something like, "You're acting like the reasons people leave aren't legitimate. I think that's wrong. There are completely legitimate reasons that people stop trusting the church." The church told me for 20 years that Joseph Smith translated the Book of Mormon using the Urim and Thummim. The church hid from me and all the membership that Joseph Smith did not translate the Book of Mormon that way. We were deceived. I don't trust the church the way I used to. I understand why others would choose to leave, and I feel like this whole discussion today is just giving us fodder to judge people who leave. It's not helpful. The bishopric member said that he wasn't trying to judge others and just wanted to share a faithful perspective on things. Regardless of intent, the impact of what he was saying was giving reasons to the congregation to judge others for not being faithful enough. I still feel the same way now as I did then. If people ask me why I don't trust the church, this is my go-to example. The church knew the truth about the Book of Mormon translation, and they lied to me and all the membership, and they fed us a better story than what really happened. I reasonably have trouble trusting an institution that makes choices like that. The account of Martin Harris taking a page of characters and Joseph Smith translation of it to Charles Anthon is completely skipped over by the manual. I think it's interesting that Joseph Smith used his name in recounting this story in Joseph Smith history, because then Professor Anthon can deny it and tell his own version. But Joseph Smith's version basically calls Charles Anthon a liar already, calling into question any rebuttal by Charles Anthon. Joseph Smith's version is that Professor Anthon said that the characters in translation Martin Harris brought to him were accurate and prepared an official document signing off on the authenticity of the translation. That seems ridiculous already that a professor would give an official stamp of approval for something like this. Then Joseph Smith says that the professor wanted to see the book, And Martin Harris replied it was sealed, and then Anthon ripped up his authenticity document. Charles Anthon did share his account a couple times, and it is quite different. Anthon said that he thought that Martin Harris had fallen for a hoax. Also, Anthon was not a professor of Egyptian. Anthon was an assistant professor of Greek and Latin. In 1828, no one could credibly claim to read Egyptian. I believe Anthon did reply that he couldn't read it. I think that's the honest part of the story. I understand that Joseph Smith maybe wanted a verification or a stamp of approval from a professor. But because of Isaiah 29, it probably works even more in his favor that he can create a story that is plausibly a revelation of Isaiah's come to pass in Joseph Smith. I do not believe that Anthon said, I cannot read a sealed book. He couldn't read Egyptian. No one could. I think that Joseph Smith and Martin Harris twisted what actually happened to fit neatly with Isaiah 29. There is some content on the 116 lost manuscript pages of the Book of Mormon in this lesson, and more next time. I'm going to wait until next time to share my thoughts about it. This lesson covers Oliver Cowdery's attempt at translating. When I look at this story now, I see it a lot differently. Oliver is acting as scribe. He has a strong desire to do some translating. If Joseph Smith just said no, or that God says no, it could push Oliver away. Saying, sure, there's no reason why you couldn't translate too, brings Oliver closer. Joseph Smith clearly lets him attempt it, but it doesn't work well. Surprise, surprise. Then Joseph Smith tells Oliver that God isn't letting him translate anymore for right now. He can only scribe. But he might be able to translate again in the future. This keeps Oliver on the hook, and he has to keep good with God and Joseph Smith if he wants this amazing gift of translation again in the future. This story feels like Joseph Smith dangled what Oliver wanted to keep Oliver on board and in line with him. I don't think Oliver ever had a real chance at translating anything significant for the Book of Mormon. Joseph Smith always intended the Book of Mormon to be attached to him as the only real translator. Most scholars don't believe that Oliver was using the plates when he was trying to translate them, because the understanding is that he didn't physically see the plates until it was 3 witness time. This would mean that Oliver was probably trying to do what Joseph Smith was doing. Maybe looking at the Urim and Thummim, more likely looking at Joseph Smith's seer stone in a hat. It isn't super clear what the phrase in Doctrine and Covenants, section 9, verse 8 means when it says, study it out in your mind. What is he studying out? And no wonder it didn't work. I also want to talk a little bit about what we teach about section 9 now. This story is extrapolated to apply to personal revelation. I'm going to read section 9, verses 7 through 9. Behold, you have not understood. You have supposed that I would give it unto you, when you took no thought save it was to ask me. But behold, I say unto you, that you must study it out in your mind. Then you must ask me if it be right. And if it is right, I will cause that your bosom shall burn within you. Therefore you shall feel that it is right. But if it be not right, you shall have no such feelings, but you shall have a stupor of thought that shall cause you to forget the thing which is wrong. Therefore you cannot write that which is sacred, save it be given you from me. The takeaway from all the manuals since I have been a kid is that God won't just give you answers. You have to make up your own answers and then check in with God if you're right. My issue with this is that it's limiting to God. God can absolutely give us answers. Sometimes God will send answers without us even asking a question. I'm totally fine with choosing an answer and checking in with God. This method is closer to confirmation bias, but we can put our faith in whatever we choose. I just hate that in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we critique the idea of just asking God. We hold up this Oliver Cowdery version as the gold standard. My feeling is that the Oliver Cowdery version should be more of a last resort. Ask God with an open heart. Keep at it for a while if that makes sense, like for a question where time isn't of the essence. If that doesn't work, then make a choice. Take it to God and see how you feel. Maybe even that won't yield what feels like an answer. Then make a choice and move forward anyway. There is power in making choices for ourselves. That's the magic of agency. That's it for this week. Thanks for listening. Please share with family and friends. Until next time.